to Innovation in Government, Artificial Intelligence and the Future of Public Sector Performance, presented by Caresoft. I'm your host, George Jackson. Federal agencies are increasingly experimenting with AI to streamline operations, improve service delivery, and support mission-critical functions. The Brookings Institution finds AI adoption use cases are way up, from 710 in 2023 to 3,600 in 2025. On this program, you'll meet some of the AI leaders behind that exponential growth from the Department of Energy, Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, CIA, and industry, and learn about their work to harness AI for efficiency, security, and responsible use. This episode of Innovation in Government starts right now. Dawn Zimmer is Chief Information Officer over at the Department of Energy. Dawn, thank you so much for taking some time, sitting down with me on the sidelines of the AI for Government Summit. How are you?
I'm doing great, thanks. How about you?
Doing good.
It's a great summit. Lots of people up there, lots of vendors.
Yeah,
It's
a lot
really
of buzz.
exciting. A lot of buzz.
Well, let's talk about some of the buzz that you have going on at Department of Energy. The first thing I was hoping to tease out is AI for the workforce. What does that phrase mean to you?
Yeah, we're doing so much. So a few years ago, we started down this little journey with a product called Julix. And Julix was really our AI hub where we put something called Energy GPT. So basically your chat GPT, if you will. We put some tools in there like how to build a performance work statement, how to help building a position description, something called Canvas, where you could do an AI search in Energy GPT, copy that content, bring it over to Canvas and iterate it any way you want, bring in existing documents to incorporate, and then have the AI actually put it into a presentation for you or clean it up to put it into a document that you could turn into a memo. That has grown over time exponentially. So when we first started, we actually had, it was our data, all right? And it was kind of like a self-licking ice cream cone where it was our data, churning our data, right? And the model was just kind of learning from inside of DOE. And that was not actually useful to the workforce in a lot of ways. So we worked with our partners over at Google, and they were able to create something called web grounding for us. So we now have an environment in our Energy GPT where we are pulling external data in from the internet through Gemini, but our data, our DOE proprietary data, is not going out. It stays in our environment. So super powerful tool because they are getting now the full power of the internet data that's out there, as well as all of the DOE data that's being kind of churned by usage as the model's being trained internally. The second tool we built is something called Quanta, which is really our data platform. And we've taken a lot of what we learned with Julix. Julix actually feeds into Quanta, and Quanta is built on a Databricks platform. And what we're doing there is we're being able to take large data sets, things like comparing all of the pricing across oil refineries and fuel costs, and turning that into some sort of analysis for what we should be doing next. How do we do energy dominance financing? How should we be doing things like grid deployment? Those are all really hard technical questions that require massive amounts of public and non-public data. And Quanta allows us to put all of that in a single environment and run those prompts. And the beauty of this has been it's taken off like gangbusters. So it started out with a couple of small use cases, and people were like, "Oh, that's pretty cool." And we just hit a home run with one large use case, and that particular executive told all the other executives. So now we have this terrible problem. We have more demand than we have capacity, where we're working really hard to, kind of keep up with the number of people who are asking us for access to our Quanta environment. We're working with outside partner agencies who are hearing about this thing that DOE is doing and want to see it and learn more about it. So there's an interagency component, and obviously industry, is really excited about what we've been able to do with some of their products to roll them into our environment and drop something that's become kind of a cornerstone for how our executives are starting to look at problems.
Maybe not as exciting to those outside agencies or partners, but possibly more important is the work that you mentioned relative to tying data sets together. What sort of challenges did you meet there, and maybe what's next as far as kind of turning all of that great data around together and reaching certain mission objectives on the other side?
Yeah, the biggest challenge with data is harnessing the data and getting the data out of the data silos, right? So everybody says, it's my data, right? Nobody wants to share, right? And so the public data is the public data. That's easy to get to. It's the non-public data that's proprietary inside the department. Getting folks to understand that it's still it's DOE's data. It's not their data,
Hmm.
right? And it's staying in a DOE environment and it's improving decision making. It's not being used for some nefarious purpose, and you're not going to, people don't care about other people's budget data, that kind of thing. They're looking for their data so that they can make smarter decisions. So part of it has been a real culture shift in opening up people's minds to how data can be utilized, and that they're actually, if they release the data, they're actually helping fix a problem. They're not, they're actually creating a problem by trying to hold onto the data. So that's been probably like our biggest challenge in that area. But I feel like we're making some headway there, and there's a lot more data sharing going on. What I'm seeing is, various executives saying, "Oh, I just ran some prompts to do these things. Oh, you did. Can I use your prompts and then build off of them?" Right? Or what were your findings? And now I can build
Hmm.
off and do something else. So that's been kind of fascinating to watch. Most don't believe me when we tell them that the tool can do this, and they go, "No, no, no, it can't." And then we give them a demo, and they're like, "Wow, this is pretty powerful." So yeah, even the deputy secretary is using it now. So he tells me it's wrong all the time, but that's okay. At least he's using it.
Mike Adams is Program Executive for AI Solutions here at Carahsoft. You are headlining this event upstairs, the AI for Government Summit 2026. Mike, it's packed. There are like more than 500 people up there. Why? Why is there such buzz, particularly for state and local government?
Sure. Well, first I'll say we have a great team. We work with some great partners to put this event on today. So thank you to them. But I think everyone understands how important artificial intelligence is, and the technology transformation that is happening across state and local government, obviously the federal government. But I think state and local government sometimes often can sort of play the second fiddle to whatever's happening in federal. But I think there's a lot of great use cases in state and local government agencies. There's some similar things like fraud, waste, and abuse that happens on the state and local government level as well as federal. The workforce transformation and enabling the workforce to do more with less by weaving in artificial intelligence capabilities into their daily workflows. So I think people are excited to hear how the technology is being used, how other agencies are using it, the challenges they overcame, and the successes they're having. I think people are excited to see what they can do.
As those use cases start to take root, I want to work in this phrase, AI readiness. We spend at FedGov today a lot of our time at the federal level, the department, intelligence community, federal civilian agencies. AI readiness there has been a focus for years. Does the AI readiness landscape look different in state and local?
I wouldn't say so. AI ready data should mean similar things to a lot of people in terms of you have to have quality data.
Yeah.
You have access to that quality data. You have governance, security, compliance. You need to have the AI infrastructure in order to enable that data and to get insights from it. And then you have to have an AI enabled workforce that knows what to do with the technology and knows what to do with the data. And I would say it can be overlooked no matter whether it's federal or state and local, making sure that you have the subject matter experts involved in that process, because people talk about a human in the loop. That is so important because if folks know sort of what the mission is, the better they'll be able to align artificial intelligence technology
Sure.
towards a productive outcome.
What are some of those outcomes? I mean, you anticipated where I wanted to go next. Mission outcomes is the way people talk about that often. What are some of the mission outcomes that you're starting to see?
Sure. And I think everyone wants to see tangible results and metrics-based outcomes. I think there's things happening at sort of the base level is that, there's a lot of these tools that are out there that can be AI assistants to folks that's going to help them do more with less. It's going to help them focus on the harder mission problems versus the repetitive manual tasks. So I think that's one key area. And then I think it's evolving into agentic AI workflows, things that are going to help citizen services, things that are going to help allow defense, law enforcement. I think that those are some of the things that we're looking for.
Lauren Oliphant is Solutions Engineering Leader over at OpenAI. Lauren, good to see you.
Good to see you as well. Thank you for having me.
So we're here at the AI for Government Summit 2026, packed house upstairs. Talk me through, relative to artificial intelligence, where LLMs are trending for government specifically. What does the landscape look like now? And maybe what are some of the needs over the next year or two?
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest shifts that we're seeing is approaching LLMs and AI in general, going now beyond just seeing them as assistive tools that are kind of baked into the experience of an existing application. So we kind of think about this as like AI-enabled capabilities where you have the ability to help you draft an email more quickly within Outlook or within Google, or help you, draft content for memos or publications of some sort, and moving towards a much more intentional design of AI operations, or creating kind of an operating system around AI, which fundamentally requires looking at this technology and really redesigning the way that workflows happen today, rather than just trying to bolt AI into different parts of an existing process.
What about the data itself? Like, you now work with agencies all across the public sector landscape. What have you noticed relative to the data foundation they have and the challenges they need to address as organizations?
Yeah, I think this is probably one of the biggest challenges that we're seeing across the landscape, and it's shared across federal as well as state and local. Really, everyone that we talk to is struggling with the underlying data challenge, so to say. And I kind of think about it in a couple of different elements. There is, one, the challenge that a lot of data is siloed in a lot of different systems today. And a lot of those systems tend to be legacy, antiquated systems that you can't just easily connect an API to and integrate the information into another system. But I also think it's fundamentally important to not think about just adding APIs wherever you can and creating this spider web of connections that doesn't actually solve some of the underlying challenges. And that kind of brings me to what I see to be the bigger challenge that a lot of leaders that are responsible for implementing this technology are facing, which is thinking about how to actually clean up that data. Across all of these different systems, especially in some of the legacy applications, there is old, stale data, and it's fundamentally important that if you are designing an AI workflow that incorporates this data, that you are pointing the AI to actually call upon the freshest, most accurate data, so that we're not, pulling in an executive order from 5 or 6 years ago. We need to make sure that it is grounded in the right data. And that's a big challenge that I'm seeing agencies face. Even thinking about the ways that users have access to information in their own SharePoints or OneDrives internally. Over the years, there's been a lot of data that's been accumulated that a user maybe shouldn't have access to in their current role, or maybe they never should have had access to it, but it wasn't that big of a concern. Bringing these systems into AI tools like ChatGPT, for instance, really superpowers the ability to bring that information to the surface and make it visible. And I think that scares a lot of leaders. And so a lot of thought needs to happen around how do we approach cleaning up this data so that we can safely bring it into AI environments in order to provide the best user experience.
Talk me through briefly, before we wrap up, the alternative here. You used the phrase earlier, intentional design. If I'm a CIO of a cabinet level agency and I'm not approaching things with that particular mindset, what risks am I going to face as an organization long term, particularly? I mean, you can try and solve short term challenges, but if you aren't building things with intentional design, what are you setting yourself up for in the future?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And I think there are the obvious security risks inherent in that. But more important, and I think maybe less obvious, is the risk that you just have this proliferation of additional tools and services and agents or bots that people have access to, which creates its own, inherent host of problems from an end user experience perspective. And I think it's really critical as you're thinking about this intentional design to, identify the most significant workflows or operations that are going to impact the broadest base of your, agency or your employees, and design intentionally those workflows as a starting point so that you don't end up with 10 or 15 different versions of like an HR agent that various different people are creating and updating and maintaining. So kind of giving that top level guidance, I think, is really important to kind of help stave off that potential challenge, but also creating frameworks and networks for the one-off use cases to be shared across different teams, different employees, so that people are aware of what other teams are building and are able to kind of join forces in order to utilize the best of what's already out there versus creating 10 different versions of the same thing.
Always great sitting down with Kim Brandt, Deputy Administrator and COO over at CMS, the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. Kim, how you been?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
So we're here, AI for Government Summit 2026. You just came off stage. One big focus of your remarks was AI's potential for fraud. What's state of the art at CMS?
Yeah, it's really been amazing to see the evolution. This is my third tour at CMS. And so the evolution of AI and how we use it has really just been incredible to watch for this tour. We have about $100 billion of waste, fraud, and abuse in the CMS programs. And because we are now using machine learning, AI, agentic AI, all the iterations, we have been able to do things that we never would have been able to do before, such as be able to aggregate data in just massively fast ways that we couldn't do before, to be able to tell in real time as the claims are getting submitted whether or not there are aberrancies, and being able to find things like billing for thousands of procedures for one beneficiary across multiple parts of the country within a very short period of time. Before, it would have taken us years maybe to find that just through regular data. Now we can see it in real time very quickly, which is amazing. We can also use machine learning to be able to look at documentation and tell if there's fake signatures, or if there's similar language being used across multiple different claims being submitted, which is clearly a cut and paste job. All of that has enabled us to save, just in a little over a year, $2.1 billion from going out the door.
Wow. That message, Kim, seems to be reflected in every level of the organization. I'm informed by conversations that my colleague Francis Rose has had with Patrick Newbold, CIO of CMS, Janine Ugo, who's been really on the tip of the spear relative to fraud. Relative to artificial intelligence, though, what does that have to do with training, and how is that being incorporated inside of the agency?
It's a great question. I'm glad you asked it, because Dr. Oz has made that a real priority for us at CMS. At the senior political team, we are all required to do an hour a week that we have to find either, on our own time or, during
Must
the
be tough
workday.
for you.
It does make it tough. I have to fit it in. But the fact is, we have a University of Chicago economist, Anoop Milani, who's just wicked smart on this. And he's been creating a training protocol. And not only do we at the senior team have to do it, but we have now 30 AI ambassadors who Anoop is training. They meet with him multiple times a week. And then those people are going out across our 6,000 person workforce and training the trainees, if you will. So it's really amazing because our goal is by the end of this year, every single CMS employee will have at least base familiarity with the full suite of AI tools that we have at CMS.
One passion area for you personally is the contracting side of the house, acquisition. Are you starting to see artificial intelligence bear fruits in that part of your portfolio, ma'am?
We are. And in fact, one of the biggest ways is we have something called CLAW, which is the CMS Labor Analysis Wizard. So CLAW in that regard. And what it is it has all of our old and existing contracts loaded into it. And as we get a new contract, we load the new contract in, and it compares the costs and the terms and all the different things about that contract against everything that's already in our system and comes back to tell us, you know what, this actually might be better as a fixed cost versus cost plus, or, these rates seem, aberrantly high or low compared to others that we've seen for similar types of work. That is a game changer. CMS has $8.3 billion worth of contracts that we give out every year. That doesn't even include all the grants. That's just the contracts. And so for us to be able to really efficiently use AI to help us save costs, certain contracts, it's saved as much as hundreds of millions of dollars. We haven't saved $1 billion on one yet, but we have saved, significant savings as a result. On all total, I'm hoping to say by the end of the year that we've saved $1 billion plus just because of that one tool and how we've been able to use AI in that.
What kind of infrastructure or governance is sort of built or maybe being built around the measurement of that efficiency gain ecosystem relative to artificial intelligence? Like, how do you track that? And you've mentioned numbers already in our conversation around fraud and how much it's saving the agency. But in addition to just dollars or work hours, how do you track that?
It's a great question. I mean, a lot of it for us is that return on investment. Like, how many dollars can we see versus the dollars that we've actually spent, and how much does that improve? But I think also for us, it is a workload sort of thing, and it's a little hard to quantify, honestly. I would say on the fraud side of the house, while we have the dollars of actual recoveries, what I'm looking at is the cost of the hours that we no longer have to spend to do this. We are able to, it's so much more efficient. We can do so much more with not necessarily less people, but people that are focused more potentially. And so that means that we're getting better bang for the buck for the taxpayer overall. It is hard, though, to get an exact measurement. I mean, even on like the contract stuff I was talking to you about, we can use the baseline of where we were before we started using the AI type of tools and then where we are after. The 2.1 billion I talked to you about is a great example of that. We had never done anything like that before we started it last March. So now we can definitely say this has had this amount of recoveries. But I think we're still learning what tools and how to measure it. I would love to get to a point where we could have an efficiency score, if you will, like how much AI has helped us be more efficient. And we haven't quite gotten there yet.
We focused most of this conversation so far, Kim, on like the internal customers, the employees of the agency, certainly the American taxpayer, but part of CMS's mission is that constituent care element. When you're factoring that into the AI equation, does that require outside data sets merging with yours? How does that work?
It requires a lot. We have 170 million beneficiaries across Medicare, Medicaid, and the marketplace, and particularly on original Medicare, which is the bread and butter of where we do it, 62 million plus beneficiaries. There is a inherent distrust of AI. 2 out of 3 of our Medicare beneficiaries does not trust AI, but yet AI is something that we are using to hopefully help be a better partner to them. So I think for us, part of it is we've been partnering with like the Senior Medicare Patrol and AARP and outside organizations to really do an education campaign, if you will. And I think you're going to see much more of that from CMS moving forward, but because we have now, thanks to the health tech ecosystem, all new approaches to helping beneficiaries manage their health care. Before we paid the claims, but we weren't a partner to them. Now they'll have clinical information, which means all of their pharmacy claims, all of their lab claims, all of their doctor claims. Everything will be together in one place with their explanation of benefits, the actual claims that were paid for them, and then hopefully their wearable information, from a continuous glucose monitor, a smartphone, smartwatch, whatever. And then they'll have an app on their computer or on their phone where they can look at all that and be able to tell, hey, you know what? It says that I had my leg amputated, but yet my leg is still here. Maybe I should call CMS about that. Or to manage your health, it'll say, hey, your A1C has been higher than it should have been for the last couple of months. Notice you haven't seen your endocrinologist in almost 2 years. Here's a list of 6 of those that accept Medicare near you. Do you want me to help make an appointment? And we'll have ZocDoc type capability to help do that. All that is because of all the AI suite of tools that we're going to be able to do that. And that's a huge step forward. The question is, how can we get beneficiaries comfortable with that so that they allow us to be able to let them have their information in those apps? Because it's all been voluntary. But if we can, then that can be a huge tool to helping them manage their healthcare better and hopefully helping people live longer, healthier lives.
Ken Rollins is Chief AI Technology Strategist at Dell Federal. Ken, thanks so much for sitting down with me here. So kick things off by explaining to our audience this term that you taught me before the cameras got rolling. That's agentic harness. I haven't heard it before. Forgive the ignorance. What does that mean to you?
Yeah, so basically it's the system around a model. It's what you put in place in order to allow the model to do tool calling, what you put in place from a memory perspective so it can actually learn over time, not only what your preferences are, but learnings that it does. It's that whole system around a model that enables it to do real work in the real world, as opposed to just providing, regular output like you would normally do from an LLM.
Are we starting to see yet, or could you predict what some of the, mission-oriented benefits for a government agency would be relative to an agentic harness?
Yeah, when you look at it, it gets really interesting because now you can do things like out at the edge. You can enable a small model to actually perform real work and punch well above its weight, in the fact that you can configure it to be long running and learn. So, an agentic harness that uses, like, say, a small Gemma 4 model that runs for like 20 hours can do stuff that you would never be able to do with a single model, and learn over time and figure out what roadblocks it hits, how to back up, how to actually get to that objective. And so when you look at the capabilities at the edge, and then, greatly what can be done at the core because you've got more resources, and the empowerment that it can actually do is really exciting.
What about on the other end of that, the flip side of the coin, something goes wrong? Traceability is a word that comes to mind. Can you backtrack and figure out, where things got tripped up in the process?
Yeah, and I think that's one of the other interesting parts about the harness. You can actually, inside of a harness, record every action, have that output to a JSON file or something. You basically make it so where every decision in the harness gets recorded. And so now you not only have observability and security and all those auditability requirements that we have, but now, especially when you look in terms of, say, a long-running harness, you've got a corpus of data and information that you can use to train that small open weights model, make it even more and more efficient. So you get into a nice AI flywheel effect where that system can improve greatly over time.
Ken, lead me into the human in the loop here. Like, this concept of an agentic harness is revolutionary from a workforce perspective in a lot of ways. To me, it almost puts that government official in a customer position moving into something new. What does that something new look like? What does that customer become?
Yeah, so it's interesting as we move into this phase and we talk about teams of agents, then that individual employee moves from just a consumer of AI to actually being a manager of the different AIs itself. directing the work, making sure that they're getting the output they want, which really has some really interesting things, I think, because it gets me excited because now we're enabling, a bottom-up approach to AI as opposed to a top-driven down. And the people that are closest to the mission really understand that domain, really understand that space, and giving them the tools and allowing them to direct and come up and utilize the capabilities of AI, I think will lead to some really exciting outcomes.
Always a pleasure sitting down with Garrett Lee, Regional Vice President for Public Sector Enterprise Security Group, Symantec Carbon Black. Sir, great to see you again.
Great to see you too.
So we're at the AI for Government Summit 2026, packed house upstairs. Obviously, AI is front and center, but one of the undercurrent themes throughout this event is cybersecurity. You've sort of developed this how-to guide, I'll call it, for government agencies relative to standing up proactive cyber postures. Walk me through that real quick.
Sure, you bet. I mean, so AI is accelerating everything that happens in a security operations center. It's accelerating everything that adversaries do. And let's take a moment to look at the backdrop here. If you took every cybersecurity criminal in the world and you treated them as a single enterprise, this as a company, if you could envision the global market for cybercrime as a company, it would be $10 to $12 trillion in 2026.
Wow.
So it dwarfs every Fortune 500 company. And that's the nasty math problem we're dealing with. And so now they're able to scale like a hyperscaler technology company. The ability for the adversary to use AI to disastrous effect is escalating daily. So this is an arms race that defenders have to keep up with. So that intersection, as AI is brought into the enterprise, introduces tremendous opportunity to scale in the face of that adversary, but it also requires some thoughtful decision-making to maintain public trust, to prevent unwanted change, and to treat systems in such a way that we're ahead of the threats to the systems themselves. AI is becoming critical infrastructure akin to the high-value assets and needs to be treated as such. These are often the crown jewels of a data operation. So the starting point is securing the data itself. So AI models are only as good as the data that they bring in and put out. And there are important decisions about the regulations of what data should be introduced to those models and what should be coming out of them. But also the models themselves need to be protected with the same zero trust rigor that high value assets require. And so we're seeing agencies focus on that aspect now and bringing in data protection capabilities to not just protect their AI models, which is vital, but to also protect the data itself. Doing your homework on data protection is vital for AI adoption and actually opens doors and gates for a faster adoption of AI.
Garrett, I know people hate when I ask them two-part questions, but I think you can hang, and I'm going to do it anyway here.
Sure.
Before we got rolling, I got the sense that even though cybersecurity as a field has been very focused on behavior, on sort of the behavioral nature of people who touch IT in an organization, that focus has gotten even more acute of late relative to the artificial intelligence impact, that cybercrime element that you talked about. Am I reading that right? Has behavior sharpened?
Yeah, absolutely. Behavioral detection, when we move from static file-based attacks, malware, to something much more difficult to notice. AI is making attacks more difficult to notice. They're able to mimic good traffic. They're able to create users that look harmless. They're able now, adversaries, to use AI to more disastrous effect at finding vulnerabilities and getting in. So behavioral identification becomes key. Identifying lateral movement, identifying exfiltration of data, identifying privileged access that doesn't fit a normal pattern is all the more important when you're now expecting machine speed to be what the adversary is leveraging against you. So you have to bring that same speed of detection back. And detection itself is not even just the finish line. It's really the starting point. What were they trying to do? What's the blast radius of that impact? How do we use zero trust to prevent further spread and contain that consideration? How do we learn from what was happening here and get predictive about what that attacker was trying to accomplish? So that behavioral detection is vital. It's also vital for understanding our models behaving the way they should. And defending automated decision making is really what this is about at this point. We are going to see more and more automation of decisions where humans are not in the loop, they're on the loop, and they're in a supervisory role to automated decision making. And being able to look at some factors like, what's the mission criticality of this decision? Should I automate it or not? What's the emission impact if there's a bad decision? How reversible is it? What's the regulatory framework say about automating this decision? And how do we ensure that this was a decision that is defensible? And so this sort of decision making has to be part of how an operational governance model is woven into how AI is adopted. But again, that data layer needs to be secured regardless, because this is a threat where, is this model performing as expected? Has it been tampered with? Has it been poisoned? Is there a user accessing an AI model that shouldn't be? So more and more AI models themselves are going to be high value assets that will need to be carefully secured.
Israel Soon is Deputy Director, Office of Artificial Intelligence at the CIA. Thanks so much for sitting down with me.
Thanks so much for having me.
So talk to me about this move from AI experiments to something I've heard people call building lasting, mission-ready AI infrastructure. What's that journey look like?
You know, over the last 3 years, we've spent this time building the foundation for AI by investing heavily in our infrastructure. We've done a couple things. We've created a relationship with our hyperscalers, allowing us to bring AI models to the top secret fabric. We've created a platform called Models as a Service, where throughout our enterprise, we can serve the best-in-class AI models to the mission components that need it. We've also created an LLM chatbot that serves the agency and the IC, and we've done a lot of investing in those capabilities to bring the best-in-class frontier models to our top secret fabric. But all this investment has positioned us at an inflection point. We're no longer asking, how can we bring AI models to our network? We're now asking, how can we put AI capabilities in the hands of every agency officer to make them superhuman, to transform the mission workflows that they do every day? So our philosophy is, we're going to allow that transformation and innovation to happen towards the edges of the mission. Those who are actually executing the mission and making sure that they have the capabilities they need to do AI innovation. But once we have a useful AI innovation, we want to bring that to the core enterprise at CIA and scale it out so every CIA officer can take advantage of those innovations that we've created. As we do this transformation, as we're at this inflection point, the challenges that we're encountering are as much cultural and organizational as well as technical. At CIA, we have a saying that culture eats technology for lunch every day. And that's true. Getting officers educated on AI, helping them to learn how AI integrates into their workflow, it's the biggest challenge that we have today, but we're doing it. And it's a really exciting time to do AI innovation at CIA.
I've heard this sort of sea change, a trend in the artificial intelligence space around how those agents, as you reference, are viewed internally. Coworker is a term that started to bubble up. Do you feel like that's taken root in the CIA? And if so, like, how is that manifested?
It is taking root at CIA, and we're seeing some very important mission wins, but it's an enduring challenge. Explainability and trust of AI results are absolutely critical for our workforce because the national security mission is a no-fail mission. We know our users won't accept AI results that are opaque or untrustworthy. That's why we need a couple things. We need human in the loop at critical points. We need the provenance of how AI came up with the result. We need the chain of thought reasoning to be accessible to the officers that are trying to figure out, why did AI do the result that it did? And that's a very important thing for us at CIA, which is to build the trust in AI in the workforce. So as I said before, it's not just about the technology. It's about cultural and workforce readiness. It's about fostering a culture of continuous learning and adaptation. And the reskilling has to be enterprise-wide. We want every employee to become literate in AI. And more important than that, we need to develop partnerships between those who are mission specialists and those who are AI specialists, and form that partnership so that when we use AI to tackle mission problems, we know we're using the best domain specialists that we have available for that mission.
For chief AI officers across government, I feel like because AI is endemic, more so than it was any time in history, there are spokes off of your portfolio of responsibilities that maybe didn't live there anymore. And one for a lot of CAIOs is procurement, Israel. How is artificial intelligence starting to impact procurement at the CIA? What does that look like for you?
Yeah, George, this is an excellent question. You know, we're transforming for a world in which the best technology was previously maybe developed in a government lab. In terms of AI, that AI foundation is really built by the private sector. Frontier models, cloud infrastructure, foundational research, they're concentrated in companies today rather than the government. So at CIA, our mission is to take the best in class of that AI technology, bring it into CIA, and adapt it for the mission. We do a lot in procurement and contracting, but what's really exciting is this year, we've launched a new framework for procurement that involves AI to speed up the procurement process. And not only that, we've also launched a new other transactional framework so that we can bring AI technologies on board them even quicker than ever before. And we acquire everything through these contracts and procurement, commercial AI tools, cloud services, and analytic platforms. But that's just one thing. Through In-Q-Tel, CA's strategic venture arm, this partnership allows the agency to invest in emerging technologies that may have future intelligence applications. This allows early insight into innovation trends and helps startups adopt their tools for national security needs and the needs of the entire intelligence community. Third, I want to talk about research partnerships. That collaboration that CIA has between universities and national labs is really important to help understand AI risks, capabilities, and limitations. And while the CIA leverages a lot of private innovation, we're also careful to manage risks, to protect the national security equities, and to ensure that AI is used in ways that are consistent with US law and intelligence oversight. One really important thing I want to bring up, George, which is the need for private industry to invest in more testing and evaluation. At CIA, we're really interested in speeding the adoption of AI. But how do we trust the results that we're getting from AI? Part of that answer is for when these technologies are onboarded to CIA, before that, the industry invests in testing and evaluation. How do we know these AI models and capabilities are delivering what they promise? What are the benchmarks that they're meeting? How have we evaluated them to make sure that the results are robust, reliable, secure, and fair, free from bias? So that's part of the challenge, and that's how we're looking forward to partnering closely with industry on this idea of testing and evaluation so that we can trust results that we're getting from AI.
Randy Hayes is VP Public Sector, Vast Data Federal. Mr. Hayes, great to see you, sir.
Good to see you again.
So let's start there. Data. It's in the title of your organization. Setting that foundation for organizations so that they can begin to leverage the promise, the benefits of artificial intelligence is foundational. Talk about that foundation.
Yeah, it's a great question. It's actually funny, in the keynote, Dawn from the Department of Energy brought up VAST. I think she said the word VAST 3 times in her keynote in about 25 minutes. And then the panel that I was on was a lot about data. So it is fitting from a vast data perspective. But if you think about AI in the federal government, or really anywhere, it really starts with data and being able to process data regardless of where it comes from, and then also being able to push that data out to where it needs to be inferenced at. And that could be at the edge, it could be local. And so I think that's one of the really cool things that we've solved from a vast data perspective is this global namespace. Because everybody used to talk about data has gravity, but now that GPUs by weight are more expensive than gold, your GPUs have a lot more weight than your data actually has. And so being able to move that data to where it needs to get processed and then move it back to whether it's the warfighter or an analyst from the intelligence community or a researcher in somewhere like NIH or CDC or something like that. So having that ability to process that data when it comes in, whether it's unstructured data, and then providing context to all that unstructured data to make it queryable, and then building a vectorization of that data set so that you can integrate it directly with a large language model. And then most importantly, having a security mindset that spans that entire AI pipeline. And I think that's one of the things that is really resonating with the federal customers right now is if you have multiple different systems doing unstructured, structured, vectorization, and processing of this data, you can't have a single security model across that entire AI pipeline. And so we've really done that in a really strong way with the encryption that we have, with the ZTA capabilities and being able to check all the boxes on the ZTA side, as well as post-quantum encryption, because that's also becoming something that's really big from a federal government perspective.
If I could stay on that pipeline for a moment, where are agencies, in a general sense, lagging about having that throughout the entire pipeline? What are the gaps that they need to fill most, urgently?
So I think there's, in the federal government, you kind of have like two segments of organizations. You have builders. These are people that are building things like Department of Energy, NASA, NOAA, NIH. These places have been building at scale systems. So they know the power envelope. They know how to build massive systems. And then you kind of have buyers of infrastructure. And these are folks that are buying from like AWS or Google or whatever it might be. And I think one of the common misconceptions is if you put all of your data up into the cloud, like there's a security model that spans that entire architecture. And so, and especially what we're seeing lately is there's a lot more hybrid, there's a lot more on-prem because there still is a tremendous amount of data on-prem and it's cost prohibitive to pump all that data up into the cloud. However, the cloud is extremely important when it comes to being able to spin up and spin down compute resources and be able to fail fast. And I think that's one of the interesting things that the government is starting to do a lot more of. And that's what like the commercial agencies have, or commercial customers have been doing a really long time is they fail fast. Oh no, that doesn't work. And the cloud allows you to do that in a really, really good time. So I think what we're seeing is a really big shift in doing prototyping and that sort of stuff in the cloud. And then when they start looking at actually building a full scale solution, a lot of that's on-prem or it's a combination of both.
Several years ago, when OpenAI and ChatGPT was released to the market, there was a bit of a wake-up moment, even in the public sector, about, oh, this is a revolutionary technology. It's going to reshape the landscape. I'm wondering if upstairs in that group at the AI for Government Summit, if there's something new people are talking about, a disruptor in the market, in that artificial intelligence vein. What are people talking about, Randy?
So I think there's a bunch of things. I mean, we could talk for hours on kind of the disruptive technologies because there's a lot of really good companies solving a lot of really hard problems. So I think looking at agentic workloads and also securing agents, right? Giving those agents guardrails so that you don't have one agent that is using another agent to change a security policy or something like that. And so I think one of the big things that we'll see is with these agentic workloads, there's going to be guardrails around a lot of what these agents are allowed to do. And so we've actually built that directly into our product, but there's also a lot of other security products that integrate directly into what our AI operating system supports. And so I think that's probably the big one. And then I think for the federal government, fiscal year 2027 is going to be kind of the age of inference, and especially inference at the edge. So Soft Week is going on this week down in Tampa, and so there's a lot of folks down there. And being able to support the warfighter at the speed of war, I think is going to be one of the bigger challenges that the industry is going to have to help solve. And there's a good chunk of folks that are really working hard on that project.
John Clay is Vice President of Threat Intelligence at Trend AI, a business unit of Trend Micro. Is that right?
That's correct. Just recently this year, Trend Micro decided to form 5 business units under the Trend Micro name. Trend AI is the commercial enterprise offering at this point. We have a couple other business units, but primarily for Trend AI, we are focused on providing both security for AI, which is new, and AI for security. We've been using AI for 20 plus years now to defend against the threats that are out there.
And your business itself has been around for almost 40, if I'm remembering correctly.
38 years now, all in cybersecurity. So we never got bought and sold. We never changed our focus. We've been focused solely on providing protection against the threat actors and the adversaries that are targeting our customers. And our customers range from commercial businesses to government agencies. Over 100 government agencies trust us, as well as consumers. We have a consumer arm called Trend Life, and that helps us understand what the threat is across the entire universe and so forth.
Take me through those core competencies, like cybersecurity being a big one for your business, and Trend AI's focus, obviously, on artificial intelligence. For the two of those paired together, what are some of the opportunities? Where do you see this cybersecurity artificial intelligence field really leaning into in the next few years?
Yeah, that's a great question, George. And I think, what we are seeing, so we have a research arm that looks at the adversaries themselves and where technology is going in the future, called the Forward-Looking Threat Research Team. And what we are seeing today, it's an evolution, both on the defense side as well as on the offense side. On the offense side, what we are seeing is the threat actors are adopting agentic AI very quickly. Part of the reason is they want AI to take their jobs from them. So a lot of people are worried about AI taking their jobs. Criminals want their jobs taken away by an agent that can do their attacks against them.
Passive income.
Exactly. I can sit on the beach or drive my Ferrari from my gains of that because my agents are launching the attacks and doing successful attacks against me. So they are adopting it much faster than we'd ever seen before, right? The threat actors, they don't change very quickly, but when they have to change or if there's a reason to change quickly, they do so, and that's what we're seeing AI bring to the table. Now, on the flip side, on the defense side, as I said, we've been using AI for 20 plus years now, right? Mostly machine learning to detect the different types of threats, email threats, web threats, malware, et cetera. But AI is changing how we can defend against the attacks much more effectively today than we've ever done before. So give you a quick example, our CEO and founder, Eva Chen, in 2008 had an idea that said, hey, we have all this data about the different types of threats that are out there. We should be able to predict where a threat goes inside your organization. And so we were like, yeah, that's a great idea. So we started doing proof of concepts and everything, but we're working with SQL databases and so forth, right? Fast forward almost 20 years now, we have graph databases, we have generative AI, we have agentic AI. We can actually now predict where a threat actor could go inside your organization. We'll give you threat paths, different threat paths that it could take, the adversary could take, and where your weaknesses are. So we're even doing cyber risk exposure management nowadays, which allows us to fundamentally look at your entire attack surface.
Yeah.
Continuously, which the government's looking for continuous protection, right? So we'll continuously look at your attack surface, all of your assets. Assets could be your PCs, it could be your mobile devices, could be your IoT devices, OT devices, could be agents, right? Your identities, et cetera. All of those we'll look at all those and we'll actually build a risk score for each and every one of those based on all the intelligence that we pull in about what's going on within the community and what the attacks are doing, and give you a score. And then, those scores are going to go from low to critical. The critical ones are the ones you want to take advantage of and look at first and foremost. And then we will give you mitigating control advice on how to fix those. Now, again, you can automate some of that stuff, but if you're concerned about automation and what AI is going to do, you can have a human in the loop still and have them manage and look and see, make sure that it's fine.
Covering the AI for Government Summit 2026, I'm George Jackson. Have a great day.